We grew up on their stories, starting from cartoons to documentaries that narrate their thrilling tales, their power that cannot be confronted, their authority that extends for miles. Wherever they exist, no other beast can snatch from them the title of the kings of the jungle, a title they have earned deservedly. Yes, they are the lions. Today, we carry in our quiver a story with an emotional connection to a lineage of fathers and forefathers. A story of pride from a lineage of lions that carried genes from their predecessors and grew to spread across the vast expanse, filling the wilderness with the roar of its lions, which exceeded 20 in number. Naturally, partnerships that generally include 2 to 4 male lions are more successful in maintaining power in competing lion prides, where challengers to the dominant leader are fewer, who sometimes has to expel them if one dares to compete, and sometimes to something worse than that. He may kill him. So, as is customary, if a new group of males managed to seize the pride, they would immediately kill the small cubs that their ancestors had fathered to enhance their strains. Therefore, the strength and survival of the pride lie in unity and cooperation among them, to ensure the continuity of their offspring and genes, and to collectively overcome the challenges of the wilderness. Our heroes today are a massive herd from Topi Pride, which has taken up a large space of the passion of park-goers and wildlife photographers in the Masai Mara Reserve, specifically in the Rhino Ridge area. During observation, some features of these lions that hide and rest inside the long grass appear, and while the sun was emitting the heat of the morning air that began to spread, the lions stood up and began to walk in search of shade. It was like a scene from a wildlife movie. The majestic Topi Pride is led by 3 powerful males. They are the sons of the famous Salis herd, with 9 lionesses and 12 cubs playing in the red oat grass. It was impossible to ignore the scene as they walked across the open grasslands. Seeing 1 or 2 lions would be very enjoyable and exciting, but seeing 24 lions was an amazing encounter that cannot be erased from memory. With such a huge pride, there is a big problem. There are a lot of mouths to feed, but they did not seem hungry, as their perseverance and experience in hunting and the abundance of prey made all members of the pride feed continuously, and watching them hunt was always an exciting experience. They are wonderful hunters of huge prey, and their great cunning and determination are unparalleled as they track large herds of buffaloes roaming the savanna and patiently wait to exploit any gaps in the herd's shield to make their next move. On one hot evening, they were seen running a kilometer towards a large herd of buffaloes, where they noticed that a clan of fierce hyenas was targeting a newborn of the herd. The clan lost with eyes flaming with fire, and they were fully prepared to kill. Nothing can stop them. The chaos caused by the fierce hyenas led to the division of the herd into small groups, which led to the isolation of about 15 buffaloes and created the ideal conditions for epic hunting. The opportunity was favorable for the lionesses to surround one of the groups and work on calculating the best angle to approach. She was sometimes testing it with a feigned advance to see how dangerous the situation was, as if she senses some anger that could lead to bad results on the hunting females. The lionesses finally started the attack. Then that commotion caught the attention of the 2 males, Osipuk and Olepolos, who ran to the scene. Olepolos chose to rely only on his tremendous strength and rushed to deal with a small buffalo. With one strong bite in the back of his neck, he was able to subdue the calf and began to carry it towards his cubs, who jumped on it and began to feed enthusiastically. Shortly after delivering that calf, he rushed again towards the mother of that calf and jumped directly onto her back. She was resisting violently in an attempt to shake him off, but his claws were deep in her flesh, so he kept his balance as much as possible. It was like watching a cowboy competition in the wild. The buffalo eventually weakened, allowing some of the lionesses the opportunity to assist the lion and complete the killing process, while another small group of lionesses dealt with 2 other calves, raising the total number of victims to 4. This massacre that happened in just 30 minutes will leave any heart trembling. It was an attempt to absorb the chaos, and photograph it at the same time was closer to the impossible, and a stroke of imagination. It was different from anything that could be seen before. It is a huge dose of emotions and adrenaline. It was a terrifying scene of the collective power of the lion pride. The relationship between lions and buffaloes is a survival battle that does not tolerate, but it is far from being a one-sided battle, as the buffalo with its huge body and sharp horns is also a huge opponent, and these powerful herbivorous animals will not deter anything to protect their herd or kill lion cubs if given half the chance. Many photographers have directly witnessed the serious consequences of the invasion of huge herds of grasslands, especially when they are terrified and fleeing, to surprise everything that comes out in front of them and trample it with their strong legs or stab it with their horns, without distinguishing a large or small animal. Even for Topi Pride, the fear and panic that 100 terrifying hooves can make 24 fierce lions run in search of safety and leave the place without any thought. Topi Pride has presented exciting confrontations with prey. They have also shown a lot of love and fun with the small cubs. Although dealing with many cubs will be difficult, but their mothers cared for them unconditionally and shared with them countless emotional moments and strengthened their collective bonds. These cubs always seem to have a spirit of exploration and curiosity, which sometimes puts them in risky situations. For example, many lionesses climb trees gracefully, and their small cubs often try to imitate them. While climbing remains relatively simple, their hooked claws and strong hind legs are not designed for smooth descent, and they must return with all caution and slowness for sure. On one occasion, one of those cubs that were stranded when it reached the top was seen jumping from the upper branches of a bushia tree and sliding in a moment to land on the long grass below, safe but terrified of that experience. Amid a lot of turmoil and attempts by some other lions in Mara to invade this pride, Topi's fighting specialist lionesses continue to overcome many challenges that dare to approach and work wonderfully to protect their cubs, alongside Salis boys' males. It is always necessary to keep intruders away from their territories and provide the necessary stability for their cubs to reach maturity, to enhance their confidence and strength, until she paves her way to find her own way and spread her genes alongside one of the largest current lion herds in Africa, that striking lethal force, which has reached the point of hunting large prey to see it feeding on elephants recently. Topi Pride is certainly about to make history in Masai Mara. This is what the coming days will show as wildlife lovers and followers of lion news around the world eagerly await to see what the future holds for this wonderful family of lions.
Roaming gangs packed with extremely aggressive males. Together, they kill any roaming male that happens to be nearby. Extremely fierce, they launch violent assaults that do not stop until hours of bloody torment have passed. Even cubs and females might fall victim to this terrifying savagery, unleashed by one of the most notorious lion coalitions in African history. It is the bloody Mapogo coalition, with its warrior who preferred to stay away from the spotlight and fame, even though he was the key to war, the destroyer of beasts, the tank lion Dreadlocks. This lion was so fearsome that the Rangers were forced to kill him to give other prides a chance to survive in an attempt to allow them their share of land and territory. Their chances against this massive lion were utterly non-existent, not only because of his gigantic body, but also because of his unprecedented courage. Nothing could stand in front of Dreadlocks without being destroyed, and he would only hunt the largest of animals. While his brothers targeted rhinos, buffaloes, and smaller prey, he alone would charge into battle with massive, enraged hippos, or climb onto the tallest giraffes to seize their necks, bringing them down bloodied, suffering a slow death in the claws of this terrifying tank beast. From the time he was a cub with his 4 brothers, born into the Sparta Pride between 2001 and 2002, they were destined to become a terrifying future for the plains and forests of the Masai Mara. These cubs were a threat to everyone, even to their own kind, for it is estimated that about 100 lions were killed by this fearsome coalition. Their power grew when they were joined by a lone older male from outside Sparta, called Mapogo, who came from Kruger National Park. Like the other cubs, he had once faced death early in his roaming life and survived by a miracle. Their lives continued as they learned surprise hunting methods and survival tactics by observing other older lions, especially after the addition of their older brother Mapogo, the experienced hunter, who was 2 years their senior. Photographers and filmmakers noticed how unusually united these young lions were. Never before had anyone seen a coalition of 6 powerful lions with no disputes over leadership. The leader of the coalition was simply the eldest brother. After building his massive body, Dreadlocks was content to remain the unknown soldier, the key to war, the crushing lion that ended disputes among his brothers when conflicts began to arise as they grew stronger and more violent, each eager to prove themselves. This was especially true as they dominated different prides of females, each brother trying to demonstrate his ferocity to secure mating rights. Dreadlocks and his brothers had gruesome killing methods. They attacked without mercy, and they managed to control more than 700,000 square kilometers, over half the size of South Africa, for nearly 6 years. At the peak of his youth and strength, Dreadlocks terrified everyone. Alongside his brothers, their coalition was feared by all. No lion dared to meet them, every beast avoided them, and none dared trespass on their territory or even approach their borders. But decline was inevitable, especially as disputes over leadership and power began. Division was the breaking point that would bring an end to the golden years of this terrifying coalition. And indeed, the coalition split into 2 groups. Dreadlocks chose to stay with Mapogo, the older and wiser brother, as well as Pretty Boy and Rasta. Meanwhile, Mr. T, nicknamed the Devil for his grotesque savagery, went with his inseparable brother Kinky Tail. This split was the downfall of the Mapogo Empire, a coalition that would forever remain a bloody and terrifying chapter in the history of legendary lions. Yet no lion, despite the division, could dare invade Mapogo territories, especially those ruled by Makulu, supported by the tank Dreadlocks, who alone could repel any intruder unlucky enough to cross into their domain. He would chase them far beyond the borders or rip them apart if they dared to stand against him. The Rangers, who had spent years gathering stories and making documentaries about these lions, especially the terrifying Dreadlocks, had no choice but to end his life, to give new lions a chance to form coalitions that might rise in power and claim some of the fame long dominated by the ferocious Mapogo brothers. The story of the Mapogo truly ended with the death of Dreadlocks. Weakness and division spread among them, and other prides began to take their chances at attacking, seeking revenge and retribution for the many lions that had fallen to the coalition over the years. The story of Dreadlocks will remain etched in the minds of all wildlife lovers for decades to come. Tales will continue to be told about this massive, ferocious lion who created a terrifying history alongside the strongest lions in Africa at that time. In the heart of the African savanna, under the golden sunlight shimmering over an endless horizon, warm winds swept across the dry land, and the sounds of wildlife rose everywhere. Here, in the famous Sabi Sand Reserve, a young cub named Rasta roamed the lands with his small pride. His emerging mane carried early signs of his rebellious personality, the one that would later define him as a colossal legend among the mighty Mapogo lions. Life in the savannah was simple, but certainly harsh. Each day was a test of survival as the pride fought to endure, feeding on what they hunted and defending their fragile territory from intruders. But despite his young age, Rasta had a wild spirit and great ambition, always pushing beyond the limits of his range, gazing with curious eyes toward the horizon, as if searching for something greater than mere survival. As the dry season came, challenges grew. Prey became scarce, and rival lions began drawing closer and closer to their territory. One evening, while the pride rested near a muddy waterhole, the roar of invading lions shattered the stillness of the plains. His mother, the seasoned lioness, roared with a trembling, fearful voice, then pushed her cubs into the thick grass, ordering them to hide. But Rasta, despite his fear, was filled with restless curiosity, with the roar sounding ever closer until the air grew heavy with danger. Then 3 massive males appeared, their thick black manes and glowing eyes advancing steadily, scanning the land with fiery malice. From the tall grass, Rasta watched his father stand bravely against the intruders, only for a swift and savage battle to break out. But the attackers had the upper hand, and soon the father fell beneath the ferocity of the invading coalition, his mighty voice silenced forever, leaving behind a void filled only with silence. The lionesses fled with the cubs, leaving behind their land and everything they had ever known. That was the moment of awakening for Rasta, a moment deeply marked by loss in his soul. As days and weeks passed, the Pride struggled to survive. The land that was once their home had become full of dangers. Rasta, despite his youth and inexperience, watched his mother lead them with unbroken resolve. But he could see the exhaustion in her eyes and the scars left on her body by endless battles. One night, while they were resting in a dense patch of grass, a lone lion appeared on the horizon. His scars told stories of countless battles fought. This lion was Makulu, an old warrior who knew every corner of the savannah. He approached cautiously, roaring a low warning to the lionesses not to attack him. But instead of challenging them, he made an unexpected offer: to form a new coalition. Makulu gathered them to explain a coalition he was building with other young lions. He promised control of land and protection for their future. His words ignited a fire within Rasta, an opportunity to overcome his helplessness and become stronger than he ever imagined. But the thought of leaving his family to embark on such a dangerous, uncertain journey terrified him. The next morning, Makulu stood waiting for Rasta's decision. Though hesitant, Rasta chose to stay with his family, but bitterness filled his heart, as though he had missed a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Days passed, and the Pride's condition worsened. Prey remained scarce, dangers increased, and they became easy targets not just for rival lions, but for the unrelenting hunger of the savannah. Then came the day Makulu returned, but this time he was not alone. With him were two young males, their manes growing thick, their eyes burning with ambition. Makulu stopped just short of the Pride, looking directly at Rasta as though expecting him to join. Rasta hesitated, his eyes shifting between Makulu, his mother, and his siblings. Then, with his heart full of fear and hope, Rasta took a step forward toward the new coalition. He left everything behind. At first, Rasta struggled. His instincts were sharp, but his lack of experience showed in his hesitation during hunts and fights. The older lions in the coalition, like the wise leader Makulu and the fierce Kinky Tail, watched him carefully. They taught him that strength alone was not enough to survive. It also required courage and intelligence. Their first true test came one scorching afternoon when they clashed with a massive herd of buffalo, giants whose horns gleamed under Africa's burning sun. Makulu crouched low, signaling the others to follow, whispering a warning filled with caution. Buffaloes are dangerous, and united they are formidable. But together, so are we. Rasta's heartbeat raced as they crept toward the herd. The smell of buffalo filled the air, the ground shook under heavy hooves. When Makulu gave the signal, the group launched a sudden attack. Chaos erupted, the herd scattered, and buffalo cries echoed across the plains. Rasta focused on one isolated buffalo. This would be his first kill. The fight was brutal, a storm of dust and adrenaline. The buffalo resisted fiercely, but the coalition's coordination prevailed, and finally, the buffalo collapsed under their claws. As they began devouring their prey, Rasta tasted true victory for the first time. Pride filled his chest. He had proven his worth to the coalition. But this was only the beginning of Rasta's journey. No longer a timid cub hiding in the grass, he was now part of a bloody, unrelenting world where every success demanded new courage and unyielding determination. Rasta's days with the coalition turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Each hunt, each fight, each moment was a test of his growing strength and tireless will. The savannah was unforgiving. There was no place for the weak. Makulu constantly pushed them to become faster, stronger, and smarter. During this time, Rasta began building strong bonds with his coalition brothers. One of his closest allies was Kinky Tail, the lion known for his ferocity and unyielding determination. Kinky Tail constantly tested Rasta, forcing him into harsh training battles, throwing him to the ground with powerful blows. Despite the brutality, Rasta grew to respect Kinky Tail's strength and the loyalty hidden beneath his harshness. But not all relationships were as easy. There was Mr. T, later nicknamed the Devil, a lion who struck fear with a single glance, known for his aggression and volatile temper. His ambition was clear in every challenge. In every roar he let out to remind everyone of his dominance. He never missed a chance to prove himself superior, and Rasta often found himself clashing with his furious temper. Yet even Mr. T, with all his flaws, was a vital part of the coalition. His ferocity was a weapon they needed in the battles ahead. Over time, the reputation of the Mapogo coalition spread. They became known for their brutal efficiency not only in hunting prey, but also in facing down any lion who dared challenge them. In one confrontation, they had to fight two intruding males. The battle was fierce, roars echoing, claws tearing flesh. But Rasta, who had grown stronger, stood firm. That battle became a turning point for him. He was no longer just a follower. He was now a force to be reckoned with. With every victory, the coalition seized more land, driving rivals back and expanding their influence. But power brought new challenges. Maintaining control required constant vigilance and awareness of new threats. Rasta, now a powerful lion with a thick, distinctive mane, began to feel the heavy weight of the life he had chosen. In one great battle, Rasta faced an immense challenge as his brothers Kinky and Mr. T fought furiously at his side. The fight dragged them to the edge of despair. Rasta could not allow them to lose, not after all they had sacrificed, not after all they had fought for. Summoning the last of his strength, he lunged at the enemy leader, knocking him off Makulu's back and drawing the full fury of the enemy onto himself. The massive lion turned to face Rasta, and the ground shook with the clash of their roars. They fought in a savage final duel, Rasta refusing to surrender. He battled not just for himself, but for his coalition and the future they had bled to claim. Finally, with a deep roar that shook the savannah, Rasta landed a decisive blow. His opponent stumbled, weakened, and withdrew into the shadows. The coalition had won, but the victory was bitter. The battlefield was marked by deep wounds, heavy breaths, and the stench of blood. As the moon rose over the savannah, the coalition stood together, exhausted but victorious. Rasta, his body weary and his mane covered in dust, looked at his brothers and felt an unbreakable bond. They had faced death and emerged stronger. Their unity had been tested and proven. Yet, as he gazed upon the land they had claimed, Rasta could not ignore the cost. The savannah had taken its price, as it always did, and Rasta knew their greatest challenges still lay ahead. When the first rays of dawn broke over the savannah, the coalition stood atop a rocky outcrop, gazing out over their newly conquered land. The vast plains stretched endlessly before them, rich with prey and vital resources. It was a prize few coalitions could dream of, let alone seize by force. For a moment, the world seemed to stop, and in the silence, the weight of their triumph settled on them. Rasta, still weary from battle, felt pride surge through him as he looked over the plains. This land was not just a reward. It was a testament to their strength, unity, and determination. Every scar on his body, every loss they had endured, had led them to this moment. Their coalition had risen above the chaos of the savannah, carving their legacy into its soil. Together, they had defied the odds and claimed a future for themselves. But as Rasta basked in the glow of victory, he could not ignore a deeper truth. The savannah was never truly conquered. It was merely a gift that demanded constant vigilance. Their true prize was not the land itself, but the lessons learned through their unity and cunning. Now, they celebrated their victory as brothers. The days that followed their victory passed in cautious peace as the coalition patrolled their new territory, marked its borders, and made their presence known. Prey was plentiful, water was available, and the plains stretched farther than Rasta had ever imagined as a cub. He thought back to the journey that had brought them here, remembering the hesitation he once felt before taking the bold step that had made him the lion he was now. Rasta and his brothers crossed lands once held by other coalitions. Some had retreated to far-off regions, while others watched warily from the edges of Mapogo territory. Guilt stirred in Rasta's heart for the lives disrupted by their rise to power, but he knew the laws of the savannah were merciless. Survival required hard choices, and they had done what was necessary. One evening, as the coalition rested near a waterhole, a roar echoed across the plains. A new challenge was approaching. A coalition of younger, inexperienced males sought to stake their claim. The threat was clear, but this time, Rasta felt no fear. He was ready to face death, ready to endure losses. The rival coalition approached, leaderless and uncertain. Rasta led his brothers to confront them, his eyes filled with determination. The younger males roared, but their voices wavered. Then Rasta stepped forward, his presence overwhelming, his roar shaking the very air. The rivals hesitated, then retreated into the darkness, unwilling to test their strength against a coalition so steadfast and powerful. When the savannah grew quiet again, Rasta felt the thrill of victory and power. His scars were no longer just marks of pain, but symbols of defiance and survival. The savannah had tested him again, and every time he had risen. He was not just a lion within his coalition, he was its heart, a living testament to determination and the will to overcome. The savannah stretched before him, vast and eternal, both beautiful and cruel. Standing atop the rocky outcrop, his mane rustling in the wind over the land they now controlled, Rasta knew the coalition had achieved what many thought impossible. But he also knew their journey was not just about dominance. It was about discovering strength, courage, and resilience. Rasta looked at his brothers, each bearing the marks of his own battles. He saw the unity forged through fire and sacrifice. Together, they had become more than just a coalition. They were a force that embodied the essence of survival. The lessons they had learned, the strength in unity, the resilience in hardship, the courage to face the unknown, had become part of their very being. These lessons were not only for their survival, but for future generations who would follow. In their shadow, cubs watched, learned, and imitated Rasta's movements. They followed his decisions and drew inspiration from his unbreakable resolve. Through his courage and through the coalition's influence, Rasta now understood that their legacy was not merely the land they had claimed or the battles they had won. It was the knowledge they carried, the inspiration they passed on to other coalitions. They knew their time of struggle and their creation of a legendary coalition would be brief, but their story must live on in the savannah, carried by the winds, remembered by lions yet to come. As the sun set, painting the sky with fire and gold, Rasta felt content. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, filled with both loss and triumph, but it would lead him to a place where he could stand tall, knowing he had given everything to protect his coalition and their future. His life was not just survival, it was a legacy of strength, unity, and courage that would endure long after he was gone.